Triple H and his immediate or his most recent takeover of WWE. And we were wondering how soon we would start to see some stuff, transpire. And at SummerSlam, a lot of people said that they felt that they saw it, and I didn't so much. But obviously, with the returns of a few people, one being Karrion Kross this past week on SmackDown.
Didn't see that one coming. Did not see that one coming. That was a very nice surprise on SmackDown.
1 week after his appearance at the Ric Flair's last match pay-per-view.
That's the thing. I watched that Ric Flair's last match pay-per-view, obviously, and I was like, oh, it's cool to see Kross doing his thing. It's like I wonder when I'm going to see this guy again, because in my head I'm like, there's no way he's going to be in WWE until he was back in WWE, and he was inserted into the main event picture. On night one, he inserts himself in the situation where Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns are setting up their upcoming match at the, what does it call it? Clash at the Castle?
Clash at the Castle in Cardiff, Wales in just a few weeks.
Now, here's my question to you. I mean, are they really going to put him in as a triple threat? Because I've been reading reports out there that they might do that. I don't think that's a great idea. I think let the Drew McIntyre Roman Reigns situation play out. And here's my reasoning. You don't want to force feed your own guys, so to speak, down the fans' throats, because we've seen it over and over again when Vince, threw Roman Reigns, shoved him down our throats. You don't want to see him do that with Karrion Kross. I think there's a way to do it with Karrion Kross where you can just make him part of the main event picture, but maybe you hold off for another pay-per-view or two, maybe build him up too, and make it so it looks legitimate for the folks that maybe did not watch him in NXT.
Now, I have seen as well, when we're talking about Karrion Kross, other ideas. One being the splitting of the titles. I don't know if that meant like Karrion Kross versus Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns or something of that nature. Maybe 2 out of 3 falls, each fall representing a different title.
That's a cool idea.
We've seen that before. We've seen that, I think, WrestleMania 2000. I remember the Intercontinental and the European title were on the line in a triple threat match. Fall 1 being like the European, Fall 2 being the Intercontinental.
I like that in theory, because you essentially, instead of just having a standard 2 out of 3 falls match for all the titles.
Well, it would still just be 2 falls. I guess it wouldn't be 2 out of 3 falls. It'd be 2 falls.
Oh,
each
2
fall.
falls. Okay, 2 falls. But still, it's still a good concept where it's just not like, you're winner takes all, so to speak. You have to actually earn it in separate matches to get each title. I think that's a good idea. I think they should bring that back. Has it been done since WrestleMania 2000? Something like
I
that?
don't know. And if it's been
remember.
done, it definitely hasn't really been done in like a main event scene. And I would definitely think that if you did it, you'd have to have Roman Reigns obviously win the first fall to maintain his dominance and the power and keep the match essentially going, because you don't want that big deflate, in the middle of the match. You want, okay, he won. And because you want whoever beats him essentially and takes a title off him to be able to celebrate and to be able to kind of go off the air as if they won. So you'd have Roman Reigns win the first fall, retain one of the championships, then lose the second fall. That would be the final fall. So then like Drew McIntyre could go off the air in the turnbuckle, holding up one of the belts. Roman Reigns is defeated, leaves with the belt still.
Here's the other part of it too. And Just thinking about it, you could make this a triple threat style match and
then Roman Reigns doesn't even suffer like any of the falls.
Yeah, and if you're not going to make Kross look lesser of the 2 other competitors in the match, you could essentially, the first fall Roman Reigns takes for he gets the victory, Drew McIntyre takes that fall, and then maybe Kross wins the next belt over Roman Reigns. So at the same time, he didn't lose the first match to Roman Reigns, but he also just took a title off Roman Reigns. So Roman Reigns is never, he doesn't look, I don't think he looks that much worse off because he still has a title. The only problem is, does Drew McIntyre in this dream fantasy booking scenario, does it make him look less of a competitor because he took both falls maybe?
No, I think Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns would have trouble with where he is standing right now in WWE, but I don't think Drew McIntyre would have that issue. But staying on the topic of Triple H and his impact in WWE, we move over to Monday Night Raw, where then we saw Dexter Lumis make his return straight off of just being a few weeks ago in XPW. Since he's left the WWE, we saw him make his return. Now, when we went to Buffalo, was that the last time Wait, no, that would never. I'm thinking of a different wedding. Sorry, was the wedding the last time?
There's a lot of weddings
the NXT wedding with him. Was that the last time we saw him? Essentially in WWE.
I feel like that was the last memory of him. Yeah, because I mean, not much after that. He was no longer in the picture.
He shows up on Monday Night Raw as like an intruder. I liked how they did it. I like how he was like he had the hood up and it just looked like they're taking out a fan. Clearly, they're keeping the camera on him, so it's something storyline related. And then they like pop the hood off as he's like walking away.
And he got a good pop from the crowd too. Like there was enough people in the audience that were like, "Oh, I know that guy." Like they were like, "Oh, that's Dexter Lumis." It was. I think it did what it was supposed to do. It was a different type of unveiling or debut of a character. And it is a typical Dexter Lumis fashion because Dexter Lumis is he's a very interesting character. And I was always curious after WWE let him go with all those budget cuts, quote unquote. Like, why couldn't they have done more with Dexter Lumis? His character was so different. Like he didn't say much. He literally would he'd look at you and you could see what he was saying without even having him say a word. And like he would do the thumbs up and things like that. So it was a different character. So I was always curious to see what WWE would do with him. Now with Triple H at the helm, now you're going to see, hopefully, and I feel like more probably, a Dexter Lumis that's going to be very creative. Maybe this is going to be a new version of I shouldn't say maybe a new but different version of Bray Wyatt. So it's like this ominous figure that's kind of around the locker room, where it makes it really interesting. And he's a brawler. So I mean,
you think it's just a matter of time before Bray Wyatt returns? I
mean, with Triple H at the helm, I think yes. And I think another name that's out there as well is Johnny Gargano. Johnny Gargano has already been reached out by WWE officials. They're trying to bring him back in the fold, reportedly. And then two other names that I didn't expect to come back, at least this soon: Sasha Banks and Naomi.
Yeah.
What's going on there? Like the deals, the ink's already dry. The deal's done. They're like, now it's just, when are they showing up? Not if, it's when. It's interesting. I got to get your thoughts on that because I didn't expect that to happen so quickly.
Now, I think if you were going to bring them back, I don't understand why essentially you bring them back, why you bring them back right around the time they're debuting this new tag team title tournament. They could have just came right back in with the belts, essentially, like they had never left in that sense.
Or what you could do is, after the tournament's over, they show up and essentially they're challenging. They're like, well, you won the tournament.
We see what we saw on AEW, essentially the interim women's tag team champions.
But you don't have to word it that way and be cheesy about it. You can literally say, whoever wins the tournament, then as they're celebrating, you hear the boss's music go, and then they come out and say, essentially they set the stage for the inevitable matchup between these two tag teams, which I think that's probably what's going to happen. I would be highly surprised when that match is in play, where the winners are the women's tag team champions. I would be very surprised at the finale of that match, or at least the next show after Sasha and Naomi show up.
And the way you say that is kind of true to how WWE's been doing a few things, and that's essentially making titles seem important. Like what you're saying, where like the women's tag titles would be featured on the following Monday Night Raw in an important way with them coming back out is probably more than the women's tag team titles have ever been featured before.
And here's the thing too: if you're looking at the bracket of this women's tag title tournament, there's some really good names in there. Like a Zoe Stark is in there. Was it Nikita Lyons?
Yes,
her. There's an influx of they're bringing up talent from NXT, which is great because obviously we've talked about it for years. We've been doing this podcast where the women's there's not enough women's competitors for a tag team division. Now you're bringing up the NXT
I still
personnel,
don't
which is good.
See any teams in those 8 teams. I still see I see some interesting combinations, but it is very tough in this women's tag team division that they are trying to create and the belts that they created to see any actual teams. I see no tag teams. I see a bunch of women put together.
Yeah, I get that, but it's giving them a platform to perform. That's the biggest thing. Even if they're not traditional tag teams, maybe like the Iconics were, like we knew them as a tag team. We did not know them as singles competitors. We knew them as the Iconics. So yes, I get that part of it, but it gives these women a platform to perform and perform in front of an audience. So for me, that's what it's really about, because let's be honest, like the women's division as a whole is I feel like it's kind of been meh, kind of okay, but not anything groundbreaking. I know we don't have Charlotte Flair. Becky's out of the picture for the time being. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Bianca's doing the best job she can, but you got to have more viable competitors at this point.
Yes. But the tag team division, like you said, looking good if that's the case, where Sasha and Naomi come back and really put some importance on those titles. We saw some importance put on some other titles, the U.S. title this week. The tag team championships obviously have had their importance as of late with the Usos and all that. Triple H, what are some things you're looking forward to with Triple H? What are some things that you've really liked other than just the debuts we mentioned?
I just like the way the matches are being put together. I mean, you're getting some quality opponents that you don't maybe see every day. You're getting to see Ricochet out there a little bit more. Obviously, AJ Styles is going to do his thing. To me, it's about the matchups that maybe we weren't accustomed to seeing as much or even at all. So that's where it really gets into. That's where the difference really lies, because Vince McMahon was kind of holding back the superstars of the statue of Ricochet, for example. And here's the flip side of it. Where's Omos? Where's Omos been since all this? I mean, is Omos going back to development? I don't know that because Vince isn't around, because Triple H values technical wrestling instead of giant guy wrestling.
No, I mean, I still think that there is still a take on this is WWE. And there are a few times that I've seen Triple H do interviews where he had a chance to really kind of, take on the legion of wrestling fans and to really show his background. And he's kind of shied away from it in a way. I saw it in one interview many years ago where they asked, where do you get all these wrestlers from? Where do you become a wrestler? And to a lot of people out there, they don't know. They have no idea. They've never heard of anything but WWE. So they don't understand that you go to school for it. You go to school like a college, you go to wrestling school. Triple H has been to wrestling school. Austin's been to wrestling school. And then you go through the indies and you have that opportunity. Yes, we've seen as of late these other athletes, these Gabe Stevensons and all these people coming through different means,
yep.
And the celebrities as well. But Triple H didn't ever mention anything about indie wrestling or wrestling schools, even though that was the way to do it. When he said, where do they come from? Where do wrestlers come from? Well, all walks of life. They come from the movies. They come from the football field. They come from everywhere. We pick talent from, and this was a little before what they're doing now, that new initiative. This was probably like 2017, 2016. And he had a chance to say, they go to school, which I imagine he would have said in the 90s, because that was really the only way that wrestlers came from. They all came from the indies. They all came from wrestling schools. Yeah. So Triple H had a chance to champion that kind of mentality of, where do they come from? They come from indie wrestling. There's great wrestling all over the world that's not WWE. And we go to these other great wrestling companies and we see these wrestlers that are coming up after they've gone to wrestling school. And you had a chance to enlighten the general public, and he didn't. He just kind of said, well, essentially did the whole, they're just stuntmen kind of gimmick, where we just find them from all walks of life and then we train them how to be wrestlers kind of thing. Which I thought, was a disservice.
I don't hate that. I really don't hate that, though, because I think a lot of...
it's a disservice, though, to all the men and women that are wrestling every Saturday night all over the world in high school gymnasiums.
But you have to look at it on the other end of it, too, because a lot of times, people that are non-wrestling fans like we are and a lot of fans are, the knock on some of these competitors that come from the indies are they really that athletic? Like, I could probably do these things if I had enough training. Like, that's the argument. You have to look at it on both sides. I agree with you. I think the independents are a great place to start.
Well, I think a lot of the general public doesn't know about the independents. They don't know that it's a school thing. So they see somebody come in from out of nowhere and they say, well, what was he just happen to be? Like, kind of how the Sting situation, Sting and Ultimate Warrior, how they happen to just be at the right gym one day working out. They think that's the difference between them being Hulk Hogan, is that they're just at the right gym one day working out.
Here's the other thing. It legitimizes WWE to a different audience too, because look at a guy like what's his name, Moss. What's his the new guy that's been there,
Madcap Moss.
Madcap. I mean, he's getting a new push, is what I'm trying to say. Madcap was a lot of people would familiarize with him as a football player at the University of Minnesota a few years ago. So him having those connections to Minnesota, the Golden Gophers, that could bring a different audience in there. Like, oh man, I remember him playing.
No, I'm not saying I like all the avenues. Yes,
it legitimizes it to a different perspective, because you're seeing guys and gals that were professional athletes in whatever profession it was. So it almost legitimizes it, where it's not like, oh, I just went to a wrestling school down the road and I learned how to do I learned how to hit the ropes, so to speak. And that's cool. If you can earn your stripes and become a wrestler, that is great. And there are a lot of independent wrestlers that are natural athletes that just are looking for the avenue. So I'm not saying everybody in the independents isn't a natural athlete. That's not what I'm saying. But it's nice to have an influx of other avenues, like you said, where yes, you have the independents where like the Seth Rollins came from, where he was at Ring of Honor for years. Kevin Owens, another not body guy, so to speak,
but a name that would fit both kind of things, and where he's obviously a professional athlete that made his way through the Indies was obviously your guy Moose. An Impact. I mean, he's somebody who's
played in the NFL.
And when he comes to WWE, I hope people recognize and it's more generalized that he didn't just come right from the NFL. He had been working at wrestling all over the world.
Here's the thing. I think a guy like Corey Graves is perfect for it. And I also think a guy like Pat McAfee is good for it. Pat McAfee would have the experience because Pat McAfee played in the NFL. Corey Graves would have that other, independent aspect of it, because Corey Graves was an independent wrestler for many years before he was cutting his teeth in WWE. So there's different perspectives. You can spin it so many different ways, especially with a guy who I know as Quinn Ojanaka, who played at Syracuse University on the offensive line, who ended up playing in the NFL, that now is a professional wrestler after all these years. So Moose is a very unique example, because not only did he become a professional athlete, but he also left the professional sports realm and went to the independents, and to make it to now I would say more towards the big time, because now people recognize him in the wrestling industry. So he's a very unique example. And I'm not gonna lie to you, if I'm Triple H, I'm putting feelers out to see when that contract ends, because Moose is a guy that I can't figure out why the hell he hasn't been in WWE yet.
Yeah, no, he's a good one. So Triple H, obviously, he's been in charge. He's been in charge for a few weeks now, but I feel like this past week's SmackDown and Raw were his footprint there. And from what I've been told and what I've read, is that Vince McMahon, any of those people who kind of wonder what kind of say he still has, essentially people say no say at all. So far, so good. People are wondering what would have happened if Triple H took over many, many years ago. We talked about this on previous episodes.
Yes.
Be careful what you wish for. I guess in this sense, so far, we don't have to be too careful, and we can be joyous. And it's everything so far that we imagined it would be, including the fact the term wrestler is no longer banned in WWE.
Thank goodness, and I'm very happy to see what the future holds with Triple H at the helm. It's going to be exciting times, and so far so good. The early returns are what we're looking for. The future is bright.